Hello, my name's Helen and I'm from Laxey and I'm going to tell you my story. But why do I feel I need to tell my story? Well, it happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was reading my Bible notes and they suggested I shared the gospel with someone. I thought that's a little bit difficult because I'm in lockdown. I thought perhaps I meant to tell my story. Had I just parked that and forgot about it? And then a couple of weeks later, I was trying to pray one morning and my mind just kept going over the past. I just couldn't concentrate on anything else. So I thought, perhaps I am meant to tell my story. So I emailed Steve and he encouraged me. And then later that morning I had to laugh because I was listening to Nicky Gumbel's Bible in a Year. And he'd read the story of the Samaritan woman at the well. And this woman had gone back to her village to tell them about Jesus. And Nicky said, that's what we should do. And he actually used the words, we should tell our story. And I thought, oh, that must be right. And then on Sunday, David Shirlifter in his sermon spoke about Jesus choosing ordinary people, not special people. So I thought, more confirmation. So here it is. Or part of it anyway, otherwise you'd be asleep. Right. I was born in Worcester a very long time ago. My parents weren't Christians, but my grandparents were. My mum's parents anyway. And they lived on a farm in Cheshire and we had lots and lots of lovely holidays on their farm, which I absolutely loved. Right, so I spent quite a lot of time when we lived in Worcestershire living in a village called Powick, just a bit outside. And that's where I remember mostly. And we had a house that was in a field, right on the edge of a field. That's where it was built. And we looked out the windows and we just saw fields for miles and miles. And on the other side there was a road and then another field. And that's what I kind of thought was normal. Right, so when we were in Powick, I was about 8 when we moved there. And I do remember Mum sending us to Sunday school, but that didn't seem to last long. I don't think we seemed very keen. Then when I went to secondary school, my friend invited me to Crusaders. And that's when I first heard about Jesus properly. How he died for my sins. Because however good I was still sinful in his sight. But because God loves me, he sent Jesus to die in my place and he was punished for my sins. But I had to accept Jesus and follow him. Well, having my sins forgiven, that sounds fine. Quite fancied that bit. But following anyone, I wasn't quite as keen on that. That was a bit of a struggle. I was like 13 and I thought, nearly an adult and I'll be able to choose exactly what I want to do. And I certainly didn't want to follow Jesus. And I can remember one afternoon when I came home, crying in my bedroom, my mum came up and said, you don't have to go back. But I did go back. And the next week when I came home, I went in my bedroom and I offered my life to Jesus, and that was the beginning of my story. Right. So, a couple of years later, we moved to Sunderland, which was a great culture shock. For one thing, houses in Sunderland were much more expensive than rural Worcestershire. In those days, it seems strange, So we got a house among a lot of other houses. And I didn't really like lots of people around. It wasn't what I was used to. But it was okay. And I took my A-levels there. And then after my A-levels, I went to work on my uncle's farm for the summer holidays. He'd taken over from my granddad by then. And on my 18th birthday, I worked the whole day on the farm from 6 a.m. till midnight. And I just thought it was absolutely wonderful. Right, but of course, during that summer I got my A-level results, which were not good. and I hadn't got my place in uni that I wanted. So I had to think again. So I thought of agricultural college because I really loved the time on the farm. But my dad was not keen. He'd paid all the time we'd been in Worcestershire for us to go to school. And he said to me, "You are not becoming a milkmaid after all that money I've paid out." So I had to think again. So I thought, oh, I know, I'll be a teacher because they have long holidays and then I can go and work on the farm. But teaching wasn't going to be for me, or not at that time, because I failed my second teaching practice. So that was another door shut. But my mum, when I got home, had found an advert for a lab technician in the blood transfusion service in Newcastle. But I thought, well, that means staying in the northeast, the industrial northeast. When I want to live on a farm, I really be a farmer. I don't really see any chance of even meeting a farmer. And from up here. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll put a fleece down, asking God to guide me. I must have heard Judges 6:33-40, where Gideon puts out a fleece. It must have been in a sermon or a book or Bible reading that I'd read, but was familiar with that story. And my fleece was that if I was to accept the job, I would receive a letter from Cheshire. And my hope was that a letter from Cheshire would not come. But I really, really wanted that, and I really wanted Cheshire to be the place where I would end up. But then, quite shortly afterwards, a letter came from a magnet company that I'd used during my teaching practice, and that was postmarked Cheshire. So I took the job, and I loved it. Right, now I'm going to have a big jump now. And at another time, I might tell you what happened in this gap. But at the moment, I've jumped now to the mid-1990s. I'm not exactly sure of the date. But by then, I was married and had 3 children. Right. So, I'd been asked to join a prayer triplet, which I did do. And one day, one of the other women said, "I think you should be a deacon." It was a Baptist church that we were attending at this time. And I wasn't at all convinced. I didn't feel like a leader. So I went to speak to my minister, and so I said this to him, and he said, "Do you know what the word deacon means?" And I said, "No, not really." And he said, "It means a servant. Does that sound more like you now?" And I said, "Ah, yes, that's right, it does." So I put my name forward and I became a deacon, and it did feel like putting my hand in a glove. It did feel really good. Right, so that was in Millom, I think I missed that bit out. That was in Millom in Cumbria. In 1998, we moved to Colne in Lancashire, and we worshipped then as a family in a Methodist church, and I made lots of good friends and was introduced to Easter people, which we continued attending right until it finished. And in 2002, we moved to Laxey, where we still are. But recently, I've thought back to the fleece I put to God. Really, it was for guidance, just for the job, and I took that job. I got the answer, and I took the job. But I always, in the back of my mind, I wanted to go to somewhere rural. I didn't really like sort of lots of houses all together and that sort of thing. The countryside was really what I wanted. So I looked back and I thought to the times that I'd been married, and my first bungalow, which was my husband's bachelor bungalow, was in a lovely village, and the bungalow had a stream running through with a heron. And then shortly after, just before the birth of our daughter, We moved to another house on the edge of a town, a small town, but it was on a farm lane, and there was a picture window looking out over a field of cows. So it was lovely. When we lived in Combe, we lived up a hill and looking out over fields and to a reservoir. And some of you will have been to our house in Laxey, with views of fields and the sea. So I just want to thank God for the many times He has guided me over the years, some that I've mentioned and some that I haven't. And I pray that I will always be guided by Him in the future in whatever way He chooses to guide me. Thank you.